It's DUG24. 24 hours, 24 sessions, 24 speakers, 100% Microsoft Dynamics. It's unparalleled, unprecedented, and undeniable fun with your hosts Beau Schwieso and Bobby Small. Let's get into it with another episode of DUG24.
So Geoff, you can hear us?
Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear you. You can hear me?
Awesome.
Yeah.
We did it. Worked the tech behind the scenes. I thought I was on mute. Apologies to everybody for not being muted. That's a major faux pas. But Geoff, we won't do any pleasantries. We're not gonna ramble on. We'll let you get jumping in. I saw a bunch of people logging in just to see you, so we'll let you get at it, buddy.
All right, terrific. Well, as always, thank you so much for hosting this, all that you guys do at Dynamics User Group, and it's a thrill to be here. Good day, everyone, wherever you're logging in from. My name is Geoff Abels, and I am a Microsoft Copilot MVP and the CEO of a Microsoft partner called C5 Insight. We're based in North America. And let's dive into this session with a true story. So flashback in time, it's the late 1800s. One of the biggest challenges facing the world's largest cities wasn't transportation, it wasn't housing, it wasn't crime or jobs. It was horse manure. Seriously, at that time, cities like New York, London, Paris, all of those cities ran on horses. Horses pulled wagons, they moved goods, they delivered mail, transported people, and really powered much of the economy of that day. And as cities grew, so did the number of horses, hundreds of thousands of horses. And the result was a growing public health and sanitation crisis. The streets were overwhelmed with waste. The stench, the smell was just horrible. Disease was an enormous problem, and leaders were genuinely worried about the future of their cities. So what do? They do what good leaders do when they're faced with a serious problem. They got smart people together. They studied the issue. They held conferences. They formed committees. They looked for better ways to collect waste, better ways to remove it, better ways to manage it. They designed improved processes, improved systems and infrastructure. And to be fair, a lot of those were really good ideas that would have made cities cleaner, safer, and more efficient. But there was one problem. They were solving the wrong problem because the answer was not better waste management. The answer wasn't a better horse. The answer was the automobile. The answer was an entirely new transportation system. And when the automobile arrived on the scene, the conversation changed dramatically. The future wasn't cleaner horse transportation. The future was different transportation. And it meant new roads, new infrastructure, new industries, new business models, a completely new way of thinking. And here's the part that just fascinates me about the story. The people working on the horse manure problem weren't foolish. They weren't resistant to innovation. They weren't fighting change. In fact, they were working really hard on solving a really real problem. They were making meaningful improvements. But they couldn't yet see that the biggest opportunity was not improving the existing system. It was reimagining the system itself. And I think many organizations are in exactly that position when it comes to AI today. So let's put this up a little bit differently. To be clear, we as a society, we as people in our businesses, we're already doing amazing things with AI today. In fact, I'll bet if I asked almost anyone in this room on this call to raise their hand, if you've used AI to save time in the last week, I would hope most hands would go up because these tools are delivering real value. Let me give you 3 examples. The first on the slide is meetings. How many hours have we all spent trying to keep up with meetings? Preparing for them, taking notes during them, writing follow-up emails after them, trying to remember who committed to doing what. Today, AI helps us prepare for meetings, summarizes meetings I've missed, identifies action items, drafts follow-up communications, and in many cases, it does it in seconds at a higher level of quality than I would if I did it myself. That's real improvement, and that's real value. The second example is sales. A few years ago, if I was meeting with a prospect, I might spend an hour researching the company, reading their website, studying their annual reports, reviewing LinkedIn profiles, trying to understand their business. Today, AI can summarize an account, research competitors, identify industry trends, draft outreach emails, prepare proposals, and help me walk into a conversation significantly better prepared than I would have been otherwise. Again, real value out of AI today. And the third example is project management. project managers spend a tremendous amount of time keeping everyone aligned, updating plans, writing status reports, preparing steering committee updates, tracking risks, following up on open issues. Today, AI can do all of that. Generate status reports, summarize meetings, identify key decisions, draft communications, highlight potential risks, and help the project team spend less time managing administrative overhead and more time actually delivering value. Again, all of these, real value. But that's the important point. These aren't gimmicks. They aren't science experiments. These aren't novelty use cases. They're saving organizations time and they're improving quality right now. And they're helping people to focus on higher value work. If you're doing these things today, you should be proud of the progress you've made because the improvements that we see here, they really do matter. They're moving the needle. They're making a difference. They create measurable business value. And they're exactly where many successful AI journeys begin. But I want to ask a different question. What if all three of those examples have something in common? And what if that common thread is exactly what the leaders of those great cities were struggling with more than a century ago? Let's put that differently. This is the question I'd like all of us to wrestle with today. What if all three of those examples, the common ground is across meeting summaries, sales preparation, project status reporting, all valuable, all useful, AI generating real result. But what are they actually doing? They're helping us perform a step in an existing process faster, better, and with less effort. Hey, that's good. But let's go back to the story we started with. The leaders of those great cities weren't wrong for trying to make the streets cleaner. They weren't wrong for trying to improve waste collection. They weren't wrong for trying to make horse-powered transportation work more efficiently. Those were real problems, and solving them created real value. But ultimately, what they were doing was paving potholes. They were improving an existing road. Meanwhile, a completely different transportation system was about to emerge. That's a distinction I want us to think about today. There's a difference between paving a pothole and building a new highway. There's a difference between making the horse go faster and inventing the automobile. And I believe most organizations are still asking AI the wrong question. They're asking, how can AI help me perform this step better? And look, that's a useful question. It's just not a transformational question. And many companies are right on the cusp of being able to ask that question. So the transformational question is the one on the slide. If AI existed when we first designed this process, would we have designed it this way at all? Because that's what happened when the automobile arrived. People stopped asking, how do we manage horse waste more efficiently? And started asking, how should transportation work in this new world that's emerging before our very eyes? That's the conversation I want us to have today. That's where I want us to reach a few years into the future and not just one step ahead. Not how can AI help us patch a few potholes. That's cool, that's fun, that's exciting, and there's value there. And not how AI can help us build a better horse. Again, there's value there. But the real thing is how AI might allow us to build entirely new highways, ones we're only beginning to be able to envision within our businesses. Because the biggest opportunity with AI is not doing yesterday's work faster. It's questioning why yesterday's work was even designed that way in the first place. So let's step back for a moment. Everything we've talked about so far is important. Summarizing meetings, preparing for sales calls, generating project updates, those things create real value. But according to Microsoft's most recent Work Trend Index research, if you haven't looked at it yet, definitely worth taking the time to download that and give it a read. According to that, the organizations pulling ahead are doing something much bigger. They're not just applying AI to tasks, they're redesigning how work gets done. In fact, Microsoft makes a fascinating observation. They found that the biggest factor behind AI isn't individual, it's organizational. I want you to think about that, because for the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time helping our customers help their individuals use AI, prompting, drafting, summarizing, researching, creating, look, that's important, that's exciting, that moves the needle. But frontier firms are starting to ask that different question. Not how can my people use AI, but how should our business operate when intelligence is available on demand? And that's where the conversation starts to shift. Because a real opportunity isn't productivity, it isn't even automation, it is truly transformation. And ultimately, it's something even more powerful. It's organizational learning. This is a really important concept. Microsoft describes every organization at its heart as a learning system. I think that's exactly right. Because if you think about it, most companies already possess enormous mountains of knowledge about their customers, about their projects, about sales, what works, what doesn't work. The problem is that that knowledge is often trapped. It's trapped in an email. It's trapped in a meeting. It's trapped on a OneDrive. It's trapped in a secure private SharePoint site or in a document or in the heads of experienced employees. And every time someone leaves or retires or changes roles or simply gets overwhelmed, some of that knowledge is going to leave with them. What if we could change that? What if every meeting made the organization smarter? What if every sales conversation improved the next sales conversation? What if every project made every future project better than any project that the organization has ever delivered? What if expertise stopped being trapped inside the individuals and became part of the operating system of the company? Because that's what frontier firms are beginning to build. Organizations that don't just use AI, but that learn AI and capture more knowledge faster and faster and faster, and share that knowledge faster, and apply that knowledge faster, and improve continuously. They're building organizations that learn faster than competitors, that compound intelligence. Think about that when you have a moment, not just gathering intelligence, but compounding intelligence. Once you begin compounding intelligence, you become uncatchable because you're learning in faster cycles than anyone else around you. If I can learn 10 things in a day and someone else can learn 2 things in a day, at the end of a week, I am way beyond where the other person at their learning pace is. The same is true of organizational learning. And that's why this conversation matters so much, because the biggest opportunity in front of us isn't writing better emails. It's not creating better summaries. It isn't even about automating more work. It's building a business that gets smarter every single day. That's what I want to explore next. Let's look at the 3 processes we already started with, and it exists in pretty much every organization: meetings, sales, and project management. And not through the lens of productivity or automation, but through this lens of transformation. How can we rethink the entire end-to-end process, not just individual steps in the process, and ultimately through the lens of becoming a learning organization? So, those 3 processes. We're going to start with meetings. I like the idea of starting with meetings because it's such a universal process. It's so core to the fabric of every organization. Meetings are pretty generally hated by a lot of people in organizations as well. And at the same time, they're incredibly, incredibly important. And where they're probably one most common thing most of our people consistently spend time in. So I think it's a great place to start because most people stop imagining meetings working better than they actually do right now. So I want to start with a simple observation of that. Most organizations don't have a meeting problem. They have a knowledge problem. Every day inside of meetings, incredibly valuable things happen. Issues are identified, decisions are made, commitments are created, risks are uncovered, ideas are generated, and lessons are learned. But most of that knowledge never becomes part of the organization's memory. It's trapped in recordings that aren't always in a consistent, easy to find place. It's trapped in notes and emails. Sometimes it's trapped in the heads of the people who happen to be in the meeting. The organization learns something valuable, but the organization itself doesn't necessarily become smarter. Now imagine a different future in a different organization. Imagine that every meaningful meeting automatically contributes to a body of knowledge, a system that captures knowledge, tracks commitments, preserves decisions, and helps future teams build on what had already been learned. Not just meeting notes or recordings, organizational intelligence. Microsoft has been building towards that vision, but they give you a flexible framework. It's not one size fits all, and that's important to understand. I want to play you a visionary demo from Microsoft of how meetings are starting to work, how they can work using AI.
Get things done. Imagine we work at a clothing company and we're gearing up to launch our new line, Zava Core Fiber. To plan the launch, my team set up a new Teams channel called Core Fiber Launch, our space to collaborate and get things done. Each channel can have its own dedicated agent, an expert grounded in the latest information from that channel's conversations and meetings. The agent takes on the name of the channel. My manager asked me to compare our new line with the competition. Luckily, I can just ask the agent in the channel to help. The agent quickly pulls the competitive information I need and drafts a summary for me. I can review and edit the comparison if needed. This one looks pretty good, so I asked the agent to send it to my manager, who it already knows without any additional input. To stay on top of our launch plan, I've asked the agent to draft weekly status reports every Thursday. Once again, I can make edits before posting to the channel, where the whole team can stay in the loop. Having an agent in our channel is like having a teammate that knows all of our decisions and updates in real time, helping us stay aligned and moving forward to a successful launch. After sending the status report, I jump into our weekly launch meeting and activate the facilitator. It handles the agenda, tracks progress, manages action items, and can help find information to answer questions. The agent can pull the agenda from the meeting invite, but in this case, one wasn't provided. Not a problem. I'll just ask it to add one. The agenda now shows at the top of the meeting stage. As the meeting continues, the agent tracks our progress, so we know what's left to cover. If questions come up, the agent can pull answers from the web and post them into the meeting chat. That way, we can make informed decisions quickly without losing focus. During our discussion, someone recommends we create a document outlining our strategy. Our agent detects the request, creates a task for it, and can proactively create a draft of the document on our behalf. The meeting is wrapping up, so I'm going to ask the agent to list the tasks we discussed. If I see a task is missing, I can quickly ask the agent to create a new task and assign it to the person responsible. Instantly, it's added to both meeting notes and the meeting plan we set up in Planner. Tasks can be...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. You can get the slides after if you want to watch these whole videos or have access to the links, but I think that's pretty remarkable. Those capabilities have been around for a while, but very few companies are fully tapping into them because it takes more than just turning it on. So here's what I want you to focus on. The most important thing in that video wasn't the meeting summary. It wasn't the transcription. It wasn't even the AI. The most important thing was that the meeting became a part of a larger system. Knowledge wasn't simply captured. It became reusable. It became discoverable. It became part of the organizational memory. And I think that's where many organizations need to start rethinking how they work. Because when we talk about transforming meetings, we're not really talking about transforming meetings. We're talking about transforming how organizations learn. The recurring meetings in your organization are especially important and are a great initial target for this. The weekly leadership meeting, department meetings, the project reviews, or the quarterly and annual planning sessions, those aren't just calendar appointments. Those are, whether we want to believe it or not, those are the pulse. Those are the heartbeat of the organization itself. They are where issues get identified and raised. They're where priorities change. They're where commitments are made, and they're where decisions happen. If we can transform those meetings that happen on an ongoing, repetitive basis, which makes them an easy target for transformation, we can begin transforming how the organization itself learns. And here's a really cool and exciting thing. Most of the technology needed to begin that journey already exists today. The capabilities are arriving faster than we can even adapt to it, which leads to the next question. If the technology is increasingly available, why aren't more organizations getting the full value today? So here's where I think a lot of organizations get stuck. They see a demonstration like the one I just showed you, and they think, wow, fantastic, let's turn it on. And look, to be honest, they're not wrong. You should turn it on. You should enable Copilot. You should enable recording. You should start using agents. You should train your users. All of those things create value, but that's not transformation. That's activation. And activation and transformation are two really different things because the technology by itself does not change the way people work. And as we saw in that last video, it's not just a matter of giving the people the tools and giving them some training. It's starting to say you need to follow consistent patterns with these tools to make the knowledge available in a consistent, reliable way. The technology simply makes new ways of working possible. And that's where most organizations struggle, not because the tools aren't ready, but because the habits aren't ready, the structures aren't ready, and the process isn't ready. Think about how meetings happen in most organizations today. Someone opens Outlook, schedule a meeting, invite a few people, maybe they record it, maybe they don't. The meeting ends. If they did record it, that meeting's probably sitting in their personal OneDrive, maybe not shared with everybody. Maybe a summary gets generated, maybe a few action items are identified, and everyone kind of moves on. The knowledge isn't really captured. But it wasn't intentionally connected to anything else. Now compare that to the vision we just saw. That vision assumes something very different. It assumes teams have a home for everything. It assumes knowledge has a well-documented and complied with destination. It assumes meetings are going to belong to an ongoing conversation. It assumes agents know where that context lives, and it assumes future meetings can build on previous meetings. In other words, it assumes the organization has been designed to learn, not just the technology, but the way the organization is adopting the technology. That's a very different way of working. The transformation isn't just teaching people how to use Copilot. The transformation is teaching people how to run meetings differently, how to organize information differently, how to connect decisions across actions, issues, and knowledge so they become part of a larger system. Because the goal is not simply to capture what happened in the meeting. The goal is to ensure what happened in the meeting becomes available to the entire organization or the appropriate portion of it and continues creating value long after the meeting ends. And that's where I think the opportunity gets super interesting. Let me show you a super short example of how you can tailor this to your organization.
I just left our company's leadership L10 meeting. A number of issues came up, and I want to make sure I add them to the issue list for discussion in the next meeting. I created a custom meeting summary for Copilot, and I use this to summarize the issues. Next, I'll copy the summary and paste it into Copilot in SharePoint. And in a few moments, it has added all 3 issues to the list.
All right, so super short little 30-second demo of something happening there. The interesting thing about that is not that AI could find the issues in a meeting transcript. The interesting thing is that the issue had somewhere to go. Think about that. Somebody had to decide, where do issues live? How should they be categorized? Who should own them? How long should they persist? Which meetings should review them? How should they connect to future decisions? Those are not AI questions. Those are business operating model questions. They're governance questions. And this is where many organizations discover that they may need to rethink how they structure knowledge in Microsoft 365. Most organizations created a Microsoft 365 structure before AI became a part of the process, if they created a structure at all. And in many cases, the goal was simple, just to store information, an online file cabinet. But in a frontier firm, the goal is not just storing information. The goal is creating organizational intelligence. Think about your weekly leadership meetings. Every week, new issues emerge, decisions get made, priorities shift, and action items are assigned. Why should that knowledge disappear the moment the meeting ends? Why should next week's meeting begin from scratch? What if every issue automatically carried forward until resolved? What if every decision became searchable? What if every lesson learned informed future work and created responsibilities for who's going to do next, what next? What if every leadership meeting left the organization smarter than it was the week before? Now we're no longer talking about meeting productivity. We're talking about organizational learning, because the future isn't a meeting that creates better notes. The future is a meeting that continuously improves the organization's collective intelligence. The advantage, and this is the important part, the advantage isn't that AI remembers. The advantage is that your organization remembers. That doesn't happen automatically even with AI. That requires significant intentionality and design on your part. And once you start thinking that way, something interesting happens. Your whole team stops asking, how can AI help my meetings? And starts asking questions like, how should my organization be structured where every meeting can contribute reusable knowledge? That's where transformation begins. That's just in meetings, one of the most baseline things we do in every one of our businesses. But now let's look at sales. So a few weeks ago, our firm C5 Insight delivered a webinar called Copilot Meets CRM, a seller's guide to AI and Dynamics 365 sales. In that session, we explored 19 different AI and agentic capabilities across the sales lifecycle. Everything from prospect research and lead qualification to forecasting, opportunity management, proposal creation, conversation intelligence, sales agents, the list goes on and on. So if you're interested in the detail, there's a link on the slide. Hit me up. I'll get to the slides with the links. But honestly, the capabilities themselves aren't the most interesting part. The implications are. Because once AI can participate in almost every step of the sales process, something really interesting starts to happen. You stop thinking about what feature should I turn on, and you start thinking about, is my revenue engine ready for AI? And for many organizations, what we find is the answer is probably not. What we've seen from working with our clients is that AI makes data quality matter more than before. For years, many organizations tolerated incomplete CRM records, missing activities, missing contacts, inconsistent opportunities, pipeline stages, maybe not always updated, because the impact was limited. But now AI is qualifying leads. AI is scoring opportunities. AI is forecasting revenue. It's identifying risk, and it's recommending next best actions. Communicating with customers and prospects even. AI doesn't eliminate bad data. AI scales the problems associated with bad data, which means many organizations discover that one of the most important AI projects isn't deploying AI, it's improving CRM data quality. And by the way, this is just a CRM example, but this goes just as much for ERP data quality sitting inside of SharePoint and other platforms. Data quality is really, really critical. There's a second realization, and that is that configuration matters. Information architecture matters. Many organizations have spent years customizing their CRM, custom stages, custom fields, processes, custom terminology. And look, sometimes for really good reasons, because maybe the system evolved over time, maybe they had some tailored differentiator that was important to them. But many of the new AI capabilities work best when they can recognize familiar sales patterns, a recognizable model, and operate within a consistent process. That doesn't mean customization is bad. It means you need to understand where your process creates competitive advantage and where it may just be historical baggage that's overcomplicating your ability to adopt AI. Some organizations will adapt their processes to fit modern AI capabilities. Others will customize the AI itself to preserve differentiating business processes. Both or some combination of each can be valid, but that's a strategic decision, not a technical decision. And then the third element, there's the human side. Because if the sales process changes, salespeople have to change too. Sales managers have to change. Coaching has to change. Pipeline reviews have to change. Sales meetings back again, those have to change. Forecasting has to change. Sometimes AI exposes that a sales process isn't being followed consistently in the first place. I know that's a shocker. Oddly enough, that can actually be good news because it gives organizations an opportunity to redesign the process while they're redesigning the technology. It gives them an opportunity to start over again when they needed to do that anyway, which brings us back to the theme we've been discussing throughout this presentation. The organizations pulling ahead are not simply deploying sales agents. They're redesigning how revenue gets created. They're aligning data, process, governance, and people, and introducing AI into a system into that system intentionally. Because the future isn't the salesperson using 19 new AI capabilities. The future is a revenue engine where people, process, knowledge, data, and agents are designed to work together. That is where transformation of sales processes begin. And our third example that we started off with, let's look at project management, another universally a challenging part of any organization, but incredibly important. And this one comes from a real life client story. So an organization had over about 1,500 employees. For several years, they debated whether it was time to build a formal PMO, a project management office. They knew projects were becoming increasingly important. They knew visibility was becoming really difficult. And they knew executives were struggling because they set these organizational goals every year, and they didn't have visibility into how do we understand overall project health? How do we understand how we're moving towards these all-important goals we set out for ourselves? But this organization didn't yet have any real mature PMO. Like most other companies, it was sort of everyone managed projects in their own way. But strangely enough for them, that turned out to be a tremendous advantage because unlike many organizations, this organization was not trying to reinvent an existing PMO. They had the opportunity to ask that transformation question I started with a few slides ago. And that was, hey, how do we actually design a PMO process for the age of AI from the very beginning? They got the luxury of saying, we're going to have a frontier mindset now. We don't have to redesign something already in place. So no more, how do we improve what we already have? They get to ask, we're building this in the age of AI. How should it work? And when we looked at that reality of project management inside most organizations, we helped them find a familiar problem. Projects exist, knowledge exists, project artifacts exist, but they're everywhere. Meeting recordings, requirements documents, designs, issue logs, status reports, project plans, emails, chats, SharePoint sites, OneDrives, Excel files, stored all over the place. The information exists, but the organization couldn't consistently learn from it, and neither could AI. Because AI doesn't just need access to information, although that's an important part of it. That's often missing with Copilot because it leverages your existing security model, but it also needs signals. And signals become much stronger when organization is structured, it's organized in consistent patterns. So the company made a decision. Every project would follow a common pattern. Nothing too complicated, but just a consistent and common pattern. Every project would have a consistent team and a consistent SharePoint site and consistent structures for where they store information about meetings and artifacts. And they'd use consistent issue tracking and other things like that. Not because governance people love governance, but because intelligence requires consistency. Once they did that, something very interesting happened. One of the first things they wanted, as I mentioned on the last slide, was they wanted a goal agent. The executive team wanted to be able to ask questions in plain English like, how are we progressing against annual goal XYZ? Sounds straightforward. So they built an agent and pointed it at the organization before they'd structured their information. The results were predictably disappointing, not because AI wasn't capable, because the information was fragmented. The agent couldn't find some signals. It found some meetings, it found some documents, some project updates, and some issues, but many signals were incomplete, some were inconsistent, and some just couldn't be found at all. The information existed, but it was not organized in a way that either people or AI could consistently understand it. Then they structured the environment. Not new information, same information. Not a new agent, the same agent. Not a new AI model, same information, the same goals, the same agent, but a very different information architecture. And suddenly, the results became dramatically better. The agent could connect the project signals, project status, meeting transcripts, issue lists, metrics, documents, executive objectives. The agent understood what was really happening. And that's the lesson. The breakthrough wasn't the agent. The breakthrough wasn't the structure. The breakthrough was creating an environment where both humans and AI could consistently understand what was happening. In fact, one of the surprising outcomes for this client was that they discovered they needed fewer PMO resources than originally expected to build their PMO. Again, PMO is a project management office. They've been talking about it for years. Suddenly they found they were way more efficient because AI was doing a lot of the administrative work that a PMO would typically had to do themselves, because the system itself was doing more of the coordination, visibility, and intelligence gathering that traditionally required a lot of manual effort. So now we're no longer talking about project management. We're talking about delivery intelligence. And that's an incredibly different conversation, because the future isn't AI helping people find project documents. The future is AI helping organizations understand how all of their projects, goals, issues, meetings, and decisions fit together. The future isn't a project repository, it's a delivery intelligence system. And once again, the lesson is the same. The advantage is not the AI. The advantage comes from a structure that allows AI to understand the business so the business continuously becomes smarter. That's where transformation begins. So 3 simple examples where we're already making progress today, but where we will vastly improve in the next couple of years as we start to focus our businesses on those one-off. But how do we do that? How do we start building highways instead of just paving potholes? I want to start with a really important reality, and that's this. Some of you still need to pave potholes, or some parts of your organizations may still need to pave potholes, and that's okay. Not every organization is ready to jump directly into, jumped up a few slides. There we go. Not every organization is ready to jump directly into agentic operating models, delivery intelligence systems, and organizational learning. If your users aren't comfortable with Copilot yet, if they haven't discovered the value, if they haven't changed daily habits, then training still matters, and it matters a lot. But training alone isn't enough, because eventually organizations will hit a wall, as many of them are right now. People will learn how to use AI, but they don't yet know how to rethink work. That's where vision comes in. People need to see what's possible. They need examples. They need success stories. They need use cases and workshops where they can have those moments where they can realize, hey, wait a minute, I've got this training, but the light bulb is starting to go on right now. We don't have to work this way anymore. The goal isn't AI adoption. The goal is business transformation. Training creates the capability to have vision, which creates a momentum, and value creates support for what's next. And what's next is this idea of a tool called a roadmap. I think this is where a lot of organizations are getting stuck right now. They've experimented, they've run pilots, they've trained users, they've built a few agents. Maybe they've even automated a process or two, but they don't yet have a destination, right? They can't look out at the horizon and say, this is a direction we're going to steadily row in towards this envisioned objective we're going towards. They've got activities, they don't have a transformation strategy. Those are 2 really different things. One of the observations I see over and over again is that organizations become so busy paving potholes that they never stop to decide, where should the highway go? That is the purpose of a roadmap, not a technology roadmap, a business transformation roadmap. A roadmap forces leadership teams to step back and ask, which processes should be optimized? Which processes should be redesigned? Which processes may disappear entirely? Which investments do we need to make that are going to create advantage? And which capabilities should we build first? Because the future we're talking about today doesn't arrive through a single project. It arrives through dozens of coordinated decisions made over a number of years. That's exactly what Microsoft is describing when they talk about frontier firms. The organizations pulling ahead are not simply using more AI. They're intentionally redesigning their operating model around it. That's why a roadmap matters. It creates vision, it creates alignment, it sets priorities, and identifies quick wins too, and it sequences those investments. And most importantly, it creates a shared vision of what the organization is becoming. Because without a vision, as the saying goes, the people perish. If people don't know where they're going, if they don't know how to step in the direction the organization and leadership is driving them in, it's incredibly easy to spend the next 3 years improving the horse without ever designing your automobile. And one more thing, a roadmap should not start with technology. It should start with business outcomes, revenue growth, operational efficiency, customer experience, knowledge capture, project delivery, organizational learning. The technology is incredibly important, but it comes afterward. The future state comes first. The roadmap simply shows how you're going to get there, what role technology will play in making that happen. That might sound fresh and new to you, but that has been at the heart of every digital transformation for 50 years. And that's what separates experimentation from transformation. And the third of the 3 tools to help build your highway is what we call a center of excellence, an operating system for transformation. And I would argue that this is a tool most organizations underestimate and fail to get underway, and it's why so many projects fizzle. Because roadmaps create vision, projects create traction, but a center of excellence maintains the momentum. And momentum turns out to be incredibly important because transformation doesn't happen the day you deploy Copilot. It doesn't happen when you finish a project, and it certainly doesn't happen when you publish a roadmap. Transformation happens over months and years as people learn, as processes evolve, as new capabilities emerge, and as knowledge grows, as priorities change. And if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, it's that the pace of change is not slowing down. The roadmap you create today will not look the same a year from now. Microsoft is going to keep introducing new capabilities. Your organization will discover new opportunities, and you'll learn things about your own business that you didn't even know when you started. That's why transformation is an intentional evolution, not a one-time revolution or training and an accidental people start doing the right thing. The roadmap points you in the direction you're trying to go, but a center of excellence helps you keep moving in that direction. Ask yourself a question. How many of you have started transformations that fizzled out because they lost momentum? That term fizzled out comes directly from a number of our clients who reached out to us on various different projects saying, you know, we got started. It was exciting. We invested. There was a lot of fanfare and leadership bought in. And at some point, we just kind of fizzled out. It felt like a New Year's resolution that we lost momentum with. Those companies were missing a center of excellence because a center of excellence provides a structure that allows an organization to continually learn, adapt, and improve. It creates a place where governance lives, where adoption's managed and monitored, where change management happens, where new ideas are evaluated, where processes continuously get improved, and where the roadmap stays relevant as the world around it changes. One of the lessons we've learned repeatedly is that people closest to a process are often the best at running that process, but they're rarely given the time to actually rethink it and redesign it. Because, hey, look, busy managing projects, they're running operations, they're closing deals, they're keeping the business moving. A center of excellence creates a place, a dedicated capacity for transformation. It gives the organization permission to step back, challenge assumptions, and ask, is there a better way to do this? That's exactly what frontier firms are doing. And they're not treating AI as a deployment project. They're treating it as an ongoing capability, an ongoing discipline, an ongoing evolution of how work is getting done, from paving potholes to building entirely new highways, because ultimately the goal isn't better meetings or better sales processes or better project management. The goal is building an organization that continuously gets smarter, continuously adapts, and continuously improves. And that's what Center of Excellence is designed to do. It's an operating system that keeps transformation alive. So, wrapping up, let's go back to where we started. Those city leaders, they weren't foolish. They were solving real problems, important problems, valuable in front of them. But ultimately, they were improving a system that was about to be replaced. And they never caught sight of that until it was upon them. And I think every leadership team should be asking themselves the same question today. Where are we paving potholes? Where are we building better horses? And where should we be building entirely new highways? Because the organizations that win won't simply use more AI. They'll redesign how work gets done. They'll redesign how knowledge is captured. They'll redesign how revenue is created. They'll redesign how projects are delivered. And they'll do that because they're redesigning their business. They're not waiting for technology to force them to redesign it in order to stay in business. And most importantly, they'll build organizations that learn faster than their competitors and compound that learning over time. That's what frontier firms are starting to do today. That's why they might feel quiet right now, because it's the very beginning of that compounding. But over time, the compounding process means that lead expands more and more and more until they're completely uncatchable. But the good news is this: you don't have to do it all at once. It's okay to start by paving a few potholes. Don't get overwhelmed. Create value, build momentum, but don't stop there. Because the biggest opportunity in front of us isn't doing yesterday's work faster. It's deciding how we would redesign our business if AI existed in it from the very beginning. That's the journey. That's the opportunity. Because the biggest opportunity in front of us isn't doing yesterday's work faster. It's deciding how we would design the business if AI existed from the beginning. And ultimately, I think that's the challenge every leadership team should be asking. Not how do we use AI, but if AI had existed when we built this business, would we have built it differently? Would we have built it this way at all? Because the advantage is not that AI remembers. The advantage is that your organization learns. My name is Geoff Abels. I'm with C5 Insight. We're a Microsoft partner that makes businesses successful with Copilot through training, vision and value, roadmaps, and our transformation operating system. Contact me if you'd like to discuss that. And look, hit me up if you want the slides with links to the other resources. There's my email address. And thank you. I'd love to hear your questions. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Geoff.
Glad
you
we got you on
definitely
there.
ended it. Yeah, you ended it right on time. That's perfect.
You guys prepared me well.
Yeah. I think you hit on the last point there that I was going to bring up in my recap, and I think was certainly a point that everybody should take home from your session is, something that I took home at least is, what would this look like if AI existed when we're creating this process? And you really focused on business outcomes rather than just activities. And to me, that is kind of that pivotal moment, right? And that's, Donna opened it up with the keynote, Chris talked about it, and all of the sessions so far have really talked about this, next transformation rather than just trying to automate a task. We're talking about a different era, if you will, and creating this blank space for AI to really take over, right? And take us into this next era of an iPhone existing and that kind of thing. We're not creating scrolling apps anymore. We're creating a different UX and a different design. So really great job, Geoff.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It puts a different spin on, again, Donna mentioned the funny thing, I've heard this so often, as an organization, is, a lot of CEOs, a lot of C-level folks managers saying, hey, we need to do AI. That's the way Donna put it exactly. What that means, who knows what. We need to do AI, figure it out. And again, what we've heard consistently and what you just mentioned, it's not about doing AI. It's about organizational change and then finding the AI that meets up to that. So you're marrying those. You do have to think in the same, parallels, but you just can't go out and do AI and expect it to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of the reasons why, as I kind of struggled with what scenarios should I share. I like the meeting one only because that is very approachable. It's not easy. It's still not easy to change that, even with all the tools that are available out there. But I think the other thing that organizations get caught up with is, okay, great, we're going to transform with AI. And they come up with this incredibly robust and complicated project to build multiple agents and all sorts of things. And look, that's wonderful. That's where we're all going to be someday. But there's so much low-hanging fruit, even among end-to-end process transformation, just among the things that we do already every single day, that you can get a tremendous amount of value out of. And that value creates vision that enables you to transform other processes.
Yep. Great, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, thank you so much, Geoff. I'm glad we got all the technical stuff worked out to have you on here with us, and excited to see more of it. So
thanks for having me, all. It's always a pleasure to be here and an honor. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Yeah.
Cool. We've got Alex Meyer coming up. Before that, I just want to remind everybody that we, in putting this together, we were looking at the kind of how the spread across the globe, and we've got 3 separate, distinct events happening. We're in the first one now, the kind of the Americas time zone. We're going to be shifting over at the end of Alex's session to our next time zone, kicking off with April Dunham. I've dropped it a couple times. April Dunham from Microsoft, who's been on and listening and soaking up all this great content, is going to be joining us for the opening keynote. So if you haven't signed up and you are available, you want to continue the fun, we're going to jump over to a different group over there that's kind of dialed right into that time zone. That's picking up a few away, and you can join us too. Stay up, be with us. But that's the link to get to that next session, which will be happening right after Alex's session here.
Right in 69 minutes from now. Bobby, I'd love to just while we have some time to check in, how are you doing on the caffeine? You started a little early that last session. I had to take my first coffee. I did find out I usually take my espresso with chocolate milk. So I did find my chocolate milk to be expired. So
Oh no.
I am hurting already.
I'm doing fine. A typical work day for me starts at 5 in the morning and goes to about 5 in the afternoon. So that's 12 hours. But within that, the benefits from working at home, I do a little workout here and there. I'm out maybe watering the garden for a minute. So I take the one morning coffee, and that takes me through. So I'm pretty good, I think, until we get to more the afternoon. Then I'll probably start layering in some coffee/energy drink. There's a great one here in Colorado. It's somewhat nationwide, called Bing, Bing. It's made with cherry, and it's the best. It doesn't have a lot of chemicals. It's just got great flavor, low calorie, low sweetener. It's straight sugar, but all sugar from the fruit for the most part. So really good. If you can find Bing, it's a pretty good product. And they make like 4 or 5 different flavors now. They've got a crisp apple and the cherry Bing and a raspberry and a blackberry and
they used to be a search engine.
And you get us in trouble already. Say those Bing jokes for So I'm feeling pretty good. I even took a bite of food within that within a break there. So feeling like I'm ready to keep moving on.